taking a daily look at the biggest stories in Denver sports and interacting live with you, the Coffee Break fam. So sit back, relax, grab a cup of joe, and enjoy your coffee break. Here's your host, Rachel V. Hill.
Happy Friday, everybody. You made it. The weekend is upon us. And there's a lot of sports action coming up this weekend that will have a lot of implications for what we have going on here in Denver. And to discuss that and break it all down with me today, I bring in the one and only Will Petersen, the scrappy one. Will, how are you?
I'm doing well, Richie. How are you, man?
I'm doing great. I'm excited for what's to come. But football-wise, you got big games for the Buffs and the Broncos coming up. But I am still unsure about how I feel about what we saw with the Avalanche on their opening night in Las Vegas. And you have been covering all things Avalanche for us as tightly as possible. And so I want to, before we get into all the football action this weekend, I just want to make sure that I get your take on what happened in Las Vegas with the Avs.
Well, I mean, when you have a hat trick and you lose by 4 goals, come on. That can't have happened many a times in NHL history.
I asked that exact same question. I said, there's no way you can have a hat trick, especially in a season opener, let alone any point in the game, and then lose by 4 goals.
Lose by 4. I mean, obviously, it's unfortunate that the Mikko Rantanen hat trick was the secondary storyline because Alexander Gorgiev gives up 5 goals on only 16 shots. I mean, that's just terrible. It really brought back memories of his rough last 2-3 weeks of the regular season last year and then the Game 1 nightmare in Winnipeg. But here's what I'll say, Richie. If this happened in Game 4, no one would pay attention, or very few people would pay attention because it's an 82-game regular season. Because it's Game 1, we're going to overreact to the very first game. If they go out and beat Columbus 5-1 on Saturday night, that's not going to get nearly the press as losing 8-4 to Vegas. So I do have to remind folks, it's 1 of 82, even though I'm not dismissing, there were some alarming things that happened.
Yeah, and listen, I think that the Game 1 of 82 discourse has been a very common theme over the last 48 hours or so since we've unpacked what happened there. But I will say this, because this is my take on it, and you're free to disagree with me. I acknowledge that it's Game 1 of 82, but is it really overreacting to said game if the issues that you are reacting to are things that carried through all of last season and have been a common theme over the last couple of years, stretching multiple goalies since then in terms of the goaltending? We've always had concerns about it. We've known about the Gorgiev roller coaster. So if we're experiencing these same things and they're not getting better, is it really an overreaction?
Well, okay, let me put it to you this way. If I had told you 72 hours ago, hey, Georgiev's going to get benched 3 times this year, you would have said, yeah, that probably sounds right. 3 stinkers from Gorgiev. Sure, I can buy that. And if that happened in Game 17, Game 29, and Game 43, okay, there is his 3 benchings. It happened in Game 1, so that's why I think it's an overreaction. Now, if he gets benched 10 times this year, sure, we should have said, hey, we saw it coming after Vegas. But just because the 1 lotto number hit on the very first one doesn't mean we can't expect this to happen. Like, we all know Gorgiev by now. This is his 3rd year with the Avs. He's going to have a handful of stinkers a year. It just stinks that the first one happened on national TV, and we were all excited because it was the first game of the regular season.
All right. Well, that hand's starting to fill up. It didn't take long. So hopefully he can stretch it a few more games before we start adding on to some of those performances. Mikko Rantanen had the hat trick, and it adds another layer to this ongoing saga that we've got with him with his contract situation. What did you make of the report that came from Adrian Dater and has kind of been buzzing around about his camp stalling negotiations and the potential for things to drag out longer than this season?
Yeah, I mean, Adrian has been around the Avs for a long time. He may not be there day to day anymore, but he still has sources in the organization. I don't doubt that. He still has sources around the NHL. But I'll direct you to what Pierre LeBrun said last night on TSN, which I thought added another layer. First of all, LeBrun said they're not close. He doesn't think they're close. So that added credit to Adrian's reporting. But he didn't go as far as saying the door is slammed shut, it's not happening this year. He said they're continuing to talk. That, to me, makes more sense. The elephant in the room, Richie, and I just wrote about this at denversports.com this morning, is do the Avalanche have, quote, an internal salary cap? Meaning Nathan MacKinnon is making $12.6 million on his deal for the rest of his deal. It's like 7-8 years. Can the Avs really sell it to the room, paying Mikko Rantanen a penny more than Nathan MacKinnon. Well, the problem is Leon Draisaitl just got $14 million from the Oilers. And you think of Draisaitl and Rantanen kind of similar, the Robin to McDavid and McKinnon. I just think the awkward thing now is the Avs are probably telling Mikko, yeah, 12.5 AAV, you got a deal. And then his camp's going, Draisaitl just got 14. You want to pay me 12.5? And they're saying, Mikko, we cannot sell it to the room that Nathan MacKinnon is not our highest paid player. I thought that was the most interesting thing from Pierre LeBrun, this internal salary cap that Chris MacFarland and Joe Sakic may be fighting a little bit. And honestly, Nathan MacKinnon may be in their ear as well. We don't know.
Yeah, I think it's totally fair to speculate that. And I think it's weird. That situation is weird. And I think it varies sport to sport. Because, I think we have this similar conversation in football where it's like, oh, Dak Prescott's making $60 million a year while Patrick Mahomes is making 41. And it's like, is Dak Prescott worth $20 million more than Patrick Mahomes? In no universe. Or when Joe Flacco becomes the highest paid and then, 10 days later, somebody else gets it. And this dynamic is a little different because it's two players on the same team. And hockey is the strictest of all the cap sports. So I think that is going to be an interesting dynamic. And I do think that would be a tough sell when you've got the reigning MVP and one of the 5 best players in hockey, and he's not 5, and you're going to pay someone else more than that. Some might say that's a reality of the sport. Some may disagree with it. So from the burgundy and blue to Big 12 country, which as of now includes Boulder, Colorado, a lot of B's in there. There's a big game up at Folsom this weekend against Kansas State. And I think the winning or losing of that game completely changes the outlook for the remainder of the season for the Colorado Buffaloes. A win against Kansas State puts them in the driver's seat to make a run at not only a Big 12 championship, but a legitimate auto bid or bid into the expanded college football playoff, thus actualizing and bringing to life the expectations that were set on this program as soon as Coach Prime set foot on campus. If they lose, I think they're still on pace in great position to make a bowl game, although their schedule on the back end might be a little bit tougher than it was on the front end. But they've done so well in the early onset that they're still in good position for that. But it does kind of lower that ceiling a little bit, or at least make it harder to get there. How are you feeling about this game coming up?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like a fork in the road game, right? Like Joel Klatt was hammering, hey, the Buffs are going to be in Dallas at the Big 12 championship game in Jerry's World. And Joel got laughed at by a lot of people. Well, if they beat Kansas State on Saturday night, Joel's the one doing the cackling because the Buffs, you said it, in the driver's seat to not only go to Jerry's World, but if you win in Jerry's World, go to the 12-team college football playoff, which is insane to think about, Richie. If they win, they'll certainly be ranked somewhere in the 20s come Sunday afternoon. And then, again, you keep winning, you're going to keep moving up with 12 teams getting in. Yeah, everything's in front of you at that point. You do control your own destiny to be in the inaugural 12-team playoff. What they did in UCF really changed the season for me because it was a true road game. They had gotten embarrassed in Lincoln. They go down to Orlando and they dominate that game and they could run the ball and they score on defense. That's what we've all been asking for is don't just make it all Shedeur and Travis. Make it more balanced. That's what the Buffs did. It feels like every week we say this biggest game of Deion Sanders' coaching career. No, this Saturday night is the biggest game of Deion Sanders' coaching career because it shifts the narrative to are we talking real big? Or if they lose, we're just saying, okay, win 2 more, get to a bowl game, right? Like the expectations will shift tremendously based on what happens Saturday night in Boulder.
Yeah, and the narrative, as much as we hate to say it, because going into this season, it was like, hey, they got to make a bowl game, and that's it. Now, if you lose this game, that expectation or that desire that you had at the start of the season where it's like, hey, just got to make a bowl game, well, the Tax Slayer Bowl sounds a lot worse than a 7 seed in the college football playoff. You know what I mean? So yeah. I think that in the magnitude of this game, to your credit, changed with that UCF win and the trajectory of it. We may be looking at one of the biggest games in Boulder. I think I heard James Marilat say since the early 2000s when they routed Nebraska, and there was some pushback that, the 2016 Pac-12 title game emeritus going into that might have been bigger. But regardless, you're talking about nearly a decade, maybe the biggest game that's come to Boulder in a long time. If they win this game and they go forward to the college football playoff and they get eliminated in that realm. Let's just play a little hypothetical here. They made it and they were Big 12 champions, but they didn't win a national championship, and Coach Prime is gone after this year. Was it a successful experiment and a ride based on how we felt at the start of all this?
Absolutely.
I
You
agree.
kidding me? You get in the college football playoff from 1-11 to the
2 years ago
playoff 2 years later. Oh, 100% a success. Maybe a flash in the pan, but people will be telling their kids, their grandkids about those 2 years. Coach Prime, Deion Sanders was at CU and led them to the college football playoff, no doubt. And Richie, you threw out let's say 7 seed. Remember, my friend, 5, 6, 7, and 8 get games on campus in the first round. That's how this. I think everyone in their brother, I want a 1, 2, 3, or 4 seed because I want to buy. Not me. I want a 5 through 8 seed. I want a playoff game at Folsom Field. Can you imagine the energy, an on-campus playoff game in Boulder?
I truly can't, because I was up in Boulder when College Game Day was here, and it was electric, even from 3:00 in the morning when I got there, and I was far from the first person there. When Dwayne Johnson was there, McAfee, the whole nine, big noon kickoff, everybody was there, and it was unbelievable. I was also at the Rocky Mountain Showdown that went to double overtime. And as someone who went to a Power 5 school in the Big Ten and has seen some pretty amazing college football atmospheres, I will confidently put that game and that atmosphere in that arena up against any sporting event I've ever been to, especially with how favorably it turned out for the home team. So to amplify that, and now you're in the college football playoff and all of the buzz that surrounds that with the momentum and the trajectory that they've built with this season and the success that they've had, I think, I don't know that Boulder has ever seen anything like it, or would see anything like it.
Yeah, no, it would be nuts. The only bummer is it's like December 20th through the 23rd, so students would be on holiday break. But I promise you, everyone's coming back. They're telling.
Oh yeah, there's Spirit Airlines was going to get a lot of flight inquiries for that week.
They're telling mom and dad, I'll be home for Christmas or whatever holiday.
I'll see you for Christmas Eve dinner. But before that, this is me time.
Yep.
Well, less than 24 hours after we find out the result of that game against Kansas State, we are going to have Bo Nix versus the Bolts, his second divisional game, and a game that has a lot of interesting subplots to it. We're going to kind of get a glimpse in the mirror of what might have been, because of how closely tied Jim Harbaugh was to the Broncos coaching search and the drama that unfolded there. And you still have plenty of evidence on both sides to present a case that Jim Harbaugh was the number one choice for Greg Penner and company, and he turned them down to go back to Michigan, and the reasoning behind that, and then where Sean Payton fell in that pecking order with DeMeco Ryans. And the Chargers sitting where they're at with their early bye, they came out of the gates kind of hot, and then they've stumbled a little bit. They are right behind the Broncos in the AFC West, and right behind the Broncos at the 6th seed in the overall AFC standings. So this game, just like the CU game, has some sneaky importance to it in terms of the direction that the Broncos season is going to go from here. They're on a 3-game win streak, and all of that has rocketed them up to where they're at. If they extend that to 4, they not only maintain their position in the AFC playoff hunt, which if it ended today, they would be a 5 seed, but also in the division after beating Vegas and putting some space between them, they would keep pace with undefeated Kansas City and put even further distance to hold them in second place. How are you feeling about this Chargers game as we are just less than 48 hours away?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote it a few weeks ago that there's no reason the Broncos shouldn't finish second place in the AFC West. And as you outlined, this would go a long way toward that second place finish. The problem is we'll get the final injury report here in a couple hours, but I think they're going to be without 2 offensive linemen, and that's on top of Mike McGlinchey. Yeah. I mean, Richie, this O-line depth is going to be tested on Sunday in a game that I really think has 13-10 written all over it. Both these defenses are pretty good. Neither offense has done a ton this year. The Chargers obviously ran out all their skill players because they were in cap you-know-what. So I think the problem that scares me in this game is big theme this season has been, hey, Bo Nix has stayed pretty clean overall, right? The sacks have not been an issue like we saw with Russell Wilson, but with all due respect to my guy, Matt Pert, I don't know a lot about Matt Pert, and he may be playing every snap on Sunday. So that's where I stand of like, hey, there's no reason you shouldn't finish second in the AFC West. This goes a long way toward that. But, man, I'll feel a lot better if we're not all sitting there on Sunday night going, damn, Bo Nix got sacked 7 times and the Broncos lost 10-9 or 13-10. His mobility, which has looked good through 5 games, really going to be tested at Empower Field at Mile High.
Yeah, and the offensive line, you mentioned Bo keeping himself clean or being kept clean for the most part. And outside of the first couple of games where they lost, he really has done a better job of taking care of the football and not turning it over, not kind of getting in his own way or the offense getting in their own way. And that's another thing that's impacted by the offensive line is the running game. And that is something that I think has been a sneaky key to success. It certainly was last week. And I think that you're going to run into trouble with a Chargers front seven that's still pretty formidable in that regard. And so I don't know. On paper, I still feel like this is a game they can win. But at some point, it feels like this 3-game win streak has featured a lot of green lights, and you're just destined to hit a yellow. I mean, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were on top of the world going into that game against the Broncos, and the Broncos spanked them. Not just beat them, spanked them. And then you play one of the ugliest games from an offensive perspective in NFL history and come away with a road win in East Rutherford against the Jets. And I'm just feeling like the game against the Raiders, you're about to go down 17-3, and Pat Surtain takes it 100 yards back to the house, flips the entire momentum of the game, and you end up running away with that one. This truly feels like a game where sitting here now, I could see us coming back on Monday morning and talking about a 4-game win streak and, oh my God, this, and this, or coming back after a ugly kind of soul crushing loss and being like, well, we kind of saw that coming.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I don't think anyone is out of line picking the Broncos. I don't think anyone's out of line picking the Chargers. I really do think it's a coin flip type game. But you mentioned what Surtain did last weekend. That's the kind of play they're going to need. Now, I'm not asking for another 100-yard pick six. I know those come around once in a blue moon. But I am asking for like a strip sack that can flip field position, something like that, or Will Lutz to hit a 61-yarder before halftime. I mean, points are going to be at such a premium that you're going to need plays like that for the Broncos to steal this game, because that's what it's going to be. Someone's going to steal this game. This is not going to be a 31-17 clean played game where there's clearly one dominant team. I think we're all going to be sitting on the edge of our seats, whether you're at the stadium or watching with friends at home, in a 10-10 game in the fourth quarter, and it's going to come down to one play. And like you said, green lights. The Broncos have made those plays the last 3 weeks. They're going to need it again this week. And quite frankly, that's what good teams do, because look at the Chiefs this year. They're undefeated, but they make one big play every game, and that's why they win. You don't have to win pretty in the NFL anymore. You have to win clutch. That's what the Broncos need to do on Sunday.
It's funny you brought that up, because I've made the allegation this week that the Broncos, this identity that they're seeming to form, at least how it's manifesting itself this year, is that team that wins ugly. Like, it doesn't look good. It's dramatic. It's not very flashy, especially in the offensive side of the ball. And they just kind of grind it out. And the Pittsburgh Steelers under Mike Tomlin have been the embodiment of that, especially playing in that AFC North, where they just win an ugly 16-14 game against the Baltimore Ravens or what have you. And in a sneaky way, the Chiefs have kind of become that team too. Contrary to the first couple of years of Patrick Mahomes' tenure as a full-time starter, where they were just Star Wars and they were just dominating everybody, it feels like there's a lot of games where the Chiefs are behind halfway through the third quarter, but they're just so confident in themselves and they have so much talent that they believe truly that they can come back from anything. Almost like a sick rendition of the Tebow time philosophy, where we never cared if we were down 17 with 11 minutes left in the game because we were going to figure it out. I think the Broncos are kind of inching toward that, and the degree of sustainability there in terms of a full season and what you can really do with that changes a lot. But I will say, if they're able to blow through another green light here and make it through this Chargers game, turn around on a short week against a Saints team that's going to be starting Spencer Rattler, who I think is going to be a fascinating first game to watch, they really are setting themselves up to be in a position to be an AFC playoff team, be it a wild card or at least contending for the division, depending on how Kansas City fumbles out. And I think that, similar to how it changes CU's trajectory, changes the entire trajectory of the Broncos just beyond this season. Because if you're a playoff team, be it at 9-8 or 10-7, it starts to question how long your rebuild window really is, or what you do at the trade deadline. So I think this is going to be.
Don't forget, Richie, they got Carolina after New Orleans. So this could easily turn into a 6-game winning streak. I mean, I know it's only at 3 right now, but it would not shock anyone if 2.5 weeks from now we're talking about the 6-2 Broncos, based on, like you said, the good fortune of facing a rookie in New Orleans on Thursday night. You win this game, this thing can balloon to 6.
It's going to be fascinating to watch. Real quick on the way out, give me a prediction because we won't talk to you before then. CU Kansas State.
Head or heart, Richie? Head or heart?
I'm a heart guy. Go with
All right,
heart.
My heart says 28-27 Buffs in an absolute thriller. My head will say the Wildcats, but my heart says the Buffs. No, I think this is another signature win for Coach Prime, and that momentum builds towards the Big 12 title game.
I agree with you. I think if they can stick to playing well on the defensive side of the ball with that, like they have been, and not just in the stars like Travis Hunter, and also continuing to commit to the run game and find success in doing that, which I think totally changed the dynamic of their offense against UCF. I think they actually can win this game. I won't be surprised if they don't, but I do think this is going to be kind of a dogfight game until some team pulls away late. So I'll agree with you on that. I'm going to take CU as well. Broncos Chargers.
All right, so 16 has been a really unlucky number in Denver. We hate scoring 16 points. The Broncos break the curse of 16 this weekend with a 16-14 win over the Chargers.
I love it. And you know what? Based on the team that they're facing, the coach on that other side, and how the Broncos offense has looked, I totally think that's there. Everything in me just feels like, again, the green light analogy that we're just begging for something to flip the other direction. I'm ignoring that. I told you I'm a heart guy. I'm taking the Broncos as well. So we'll see how it all pans out. Can't wait to react to it coming up Monday. And we'll be keeping tabs on all things Avalanche that you'll be putting out at denversports.com. They got the Columbus Blue Jackets coming up this weekend. Will, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, no problem. And while we were on the air, real quick, Richie, the Avs claimed a goalie. Jake Shapiro's writing about it at denversports.com. You might be onto something. This goalie's not very good. That's the teaser. But they still claimed a goalie with NHL experience. You can go read about it at denversports.com.
I will do it as soon as we sign off the air here, and you should too. Will, thank you, my friend, for coming on with us. Thank you all for joining us. Everybody get back to work.